Hello and welcome to the Exceleration Netcast. This is episode 10. In this episode, we've got a bunch of names, and what we're looking to do is extract the first name, the middle names, and the last name. Everybody's got a first name, everybody's got a last name. Some people have no middle name, some people have one middle name, some people have two middle names. So we need to find some formulas that are smart enough to deal with that and make that work. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to find the first space and the last space in this text string over here. Because we know that everything before the first space, everything before that first space right there, that's going to be the first name. Everything after the last space is going to be the last name, and everything between the first space and the last space is going to be the middle name. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to find what the largest length of this string is, so that I can make the formulas that I'm going to make dynamic and make them deal with any number of characters, but it makes for a much smaller formula if I just find the biggest one and sort of make it a little bigger than that. So I'm going to do len. Len finds the length of a text string. I'm going to, control backspace to go back up to my formula, close parentheses. So if I were to highlight this guy right here and hit F9, that's the length of all of these names. I'm going to hit Control Z. Well, I don't want all of them, I just want the biggest one. So I'm going to do the max formula, which is going to take this array and find the biggest number in it and return that. And since I'm passing, len's only designed to take a single value, and I'm passing it an array. This is an array formula. So to make this work, I'm going to hold down Control Shift and hit Enter. That's how you enter array formulas. Control Shift Enter. Notice the little curly brackets. That's how you know that Excel thinks of this as an array formula. So the largest number of characters in any of these is 33. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that the largest I'm ever going to have to deal with is 64, which is almost double that. So that should work quite nicely. Okay, so on to the formulas. Finding the first space is pretty easy. I'm going to do a find formula. Find finds a text string within a larger text string. So what I'm looking for is a space, quotation mark, space, quotation mark, comma. The text that I'm looking for is over here. And I can include a start number if I want to, where to start looking for that text. But I just want to start at the beginning, so I'm going to leave it blank. Hit Enter. Okay, that's where the first space is. Finding the last space is a bit more involved. Finding like the second or third, there's ways to do that. But we want something that always finds the last space, even if there's, I don't know, 100 of them in the string. So we're going to start by doing a mid. Mid extracts a defined number of characters from a text string at a defined place. So the text that I want to pull from is this guy right here. The number that I want to start from, well, let's leave that blank for a second. So the number of characters I want to pull is 1. Okay, so I'm going to close parentheses right there. If I hit 1 right there, if I say, okay, I want to do the mid function, and I want to pull 1 character starting at position 1, I highlight the entire thing, hit F9 to evaluate it, it's going to pull the first one. Control Z. If I change this guy to a 2, highlight again, hit F9, I get the second one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is instead of giving it a number here, I'm going to feed it an array. I'm going to feed it an array row A1 through A64. And what this little subconstruction does, what this little mini guy here does, is it's going to give me a list of numbers 1 through 64 as an array. So if I hit F9, 1 through 64. What the row function does is it returns the row number of a given range, and since I've given it like a two-dimensional range right here, it's going to return the row of all of them, 1 through 64. The other thing I'm going to have to remember to do is I'm going to highlight this guy, hit F4 to make it an absolute reference. That way when I copy this function around, it's always going to be finding the row numbers of 1 through 64. Okay, so now if I highlight this and hit F9, scroll down, scroll back up, you'll notice I have an array where each element is the number, or is the character from that text string. So each character in the text string gets its own element in the array. So Z, A, N, and there's the first space right there, and there's the second space, third space. Okay, that's a good start. So now that we've got that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an if function, open parentheses. I want to know if this little thing that we just built, if that equals space, quotation mark, space, quotation mark, well, then I want you to feed me back row A1 through A64. And once again, I'm going to highlight this guy and hit F4 to make sure that's an absolute reference. So if it is a space, I want you to return the corresponding number, 1 through 64. If it's not a space, I want you to return null string. Absolutely nothing. So, okay, let's highlight this guy, hit F9 to see what it does, scroll down, scroll back up. Okay, so now we've got an array where everywhere where there was a space, there's the number where that space is in the text string. So we've got spaces at 8, 17, and 25. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now that we've got that, oops, let down. What we want to find is we're interested in the last space. So we had that real simple formula to find the first one. What we're interested in is the last one, which happens to be the biggest number, and will always be the biggest number in this array. So I'm going to hit Control-Z, and I'm going to look for the max, which is going to find the biggest number in that thing we just built. Okay, since I am feeding an array through an if statement, this is going to be an array formula, so to enter it, I have to hit Control-Shift-Enter. Okay, now you see the little curly brackets around there. That's how you know that Excel has thought of this as an array function. Okay, so now we've got the positions of the first and last spaces. We can go ahead and start pulling our text. The first name is real easy. We're going to use a left function. I'm going to left pulls text from the left side of a text string, and it's going to pull however many characters I tell it to pull. So I'm going to pull from this text string. It's going to start pulling over here, and here where it says number of characters, if I were to do 2, it would pull the first 2. If I were to do 5, it would pull 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what I'm going to have it pull is this guy right here. Now remember though that this is where the first space is. So that's between that H, the little h, and the big H. That space right there is that's the 8th position. So I actually only want to pull everywhere 1 less than that. So I'm going to subtract 1. So now it's going to pull only the first name and no additional spaces. So I'm going to hit Enter. So for the middle name, I'm going to use a mid formula, which we've already looked at. I'm going to pull from this text the starting number. Well, okay, so if the first space is here, that's number 8, I want to go 1 past that because that's where the first letter of the middle name is. So I'm going to hit D4. I'm going to add 1. That's going to take me to the first space and then 1 past it, comma, and the number of characters, well, I'm going to take the last position and subtract the first position, and that's going to pull the right number of characters. So I'm pulling these guys right here, but not the last ones. So I'm going to hit Enter. Now, if you'll notice, because of the way that this is set up, there's actually a space in front of the H that we don't want. So there's a lot of fancy ways to fix that problem, but the way I'm going to do it is the easy way. Nice and clean. Or not text, I'm sorry. I want trim. The trim function takes a text string and it removes all spaces except single spaces between words. So if you have a space at the beginning of the text string, it'll remove that. If you have a space at the end of the text string, it'll remove that. If you have more than 1 space between words, it'll reduce it to 1. Okay, so I'm going to hit Enter once again. Okay, there we've got our middle name. That's great. And for the last name, this one's even easier than the middle name. I'm going to do the mid function again. I'm going to pull from this text. The start number is, well, that's where we want to pull Kelly, right? So let's start at the last position, 25. But I don't want to pull that space. I want to pull everything after that space. So I'm going to add 1 to it. Close parentheses. Hit. Whoops. What am I doing? Oh, I'm sorry. The number of characters is, I'm going to do 64 again. So the way mid works is if I tell it to pull too many characters, it'll stop pulling characters once it runs out of things to pull. So it's going to pull 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's just going to stop pulling stuff. So I'm going to hit Enter. Okay, there we go. We've got that. So now we've got all of our formulas. Although what I want to do next is we've got these two helper columns, and they're not horrible, but you don't. I like to try and avoid having helper columns if I can. So why don't we take these formulas and put them into the actual functions. So what I'm going to do right here is first I'm going to go over to D4, double click on it to open in edit mode. I'm going to highlight all of the formula except for the equal sign. I'm going to hit Control C to copy it, hit escape, and I'm going to go over here, and what I'm looking for is anywhere there's a reference to D4, that guy right there, I'm going to highlight it and hit Control V to paste that the formula that was in D4. So we no longer need this cell right here because we've just put what it found into this formula. So I'm going to hit Enter. Okay. Now I'm going to look for D4 in here. There's the first one. Highlight it, hit Control V to paste it. And I'm going to highlight it again, hit Control V to paste it. So there's no more references to D4 in there. Notice how it's no longer highlighted. And hit Enter. And I'm going to look for references to D4 in here. Oh, look, it's not highlighted. There are no references, so I don't have to do anything. Okay, now that I've got that one done, I'm going to double-click, open E4, highlight everything but the equal sign, hit Control-Z, hit Escape. Okay, so I'm looking for E4. Okay, there's no reference in there. Hit Escape, don't have to do anything. Double-click on this guy, looking for E4. Oh, there's one. I'm going to hit Control-V to paste what was in E4 into this formula, and that's the last reference to E4. And remember, now that I've put an array function or an array formula into this larger formula, to make this work, I have to when I hit Enter, I'm going to hold down Control Shift and hit Enter. Okay, now you notice if we double click on it, it's no longer referring to that. Control Shift Enter. And now over here, we're going to highlight E4 one last time, Control V, and Control Shift Enter to enter the formula. Now, if I delete these guys, notice that these formulas still work. So I'm going to go over here, Control Spacebar to highlight that column, Shift to the right to highlight both columns, Alt HD-C to delete those columns. Okay, now I'm going to highlight these guys. Moment of truth, double click to send it down. Okay, now we've got all of our first names, our middle names, and our last names. And everything looks good. So I hope that was helpful, and I will see you next time.